Travis has a whole bunch of goaltender related questions, and I can't wait to honestly be a fly on the wall for all of that. But you talked about your retirement. I said this before we started the show, man, but I couldn't be prouder to see you make the transition that you did because to pull the curtain back a little bit, there's more players in any sport who start thinking about that. What's my next step going to be after retirement, and where that falls in line as far as when they're still playing. Some comes earlier than others. I think knowing you as long as I have, I think that may have always been an option. It's never something you said out loud, but when you announced it that you were going to be going and working with NHL Network and doing your own podcast, to me, I just went, oh yeah, well, that makes total sense. But at what point did you realize, okay, this is what I'm going to go towards?
You know what? It wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. Some guys lay some groundwork before they retire. They make connections. They have things lined up with the team or with, something outside of hockey. I think the biggest question is, am I going to stay in the game of hockey or go do something else completely? Because, one of my buddies said it best when he retired. It's like if you go to a financial company, like where it's your resume and you give them your hockey DB stats, you're like, here's my resume. This is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. Like you don't have a workable resume. So it's like, all right, you're going to start an entry level position. You're going to do this, this, and this. So depending on where you are in your life and where you've done, what you've done financially, yeah, it's like, all right, I could go maybe work for UBS and earn a little bit of money, but I'd be in the city from 9 to 5 for 5 days a week. Is that something I want to do after I was just gone and traveling and doing my thing for so long? So I think that factored in for me. And the media stuff, more offers came from media than anything else. I had more interest from networks and things like that along the way. So I think, hopefully, as you said, you put in the equity during your career. Are you a good interview? Are you articulate? Can you speak well? How have you done in front of the? I did some stints, on NBC with the NHL stuff when I was playing, and it went well. So fortunately, that stuck in people's minds, and they looked at me as a viable media option. But some guys get approached by the teams like, hey, do you want to come scout or be in the front office or join the coaching staff? So it's all kind of different of how you're viewed. And I didn't really have a plan necessarily. I was blessed to make enough money where I didn't have to go do something right away. And I think when you're doing this for 15, 16 years, your family gives up a lot for you to go do what you love doing. So I think it was, this year was sort of like a bridge year for me where, I could go do NHL Network. I did a few Islanders games part-time just to get the experience, just to get the exposure, but it wasn't like a full-time gig where I was in 5, 6 days a week or working long hours. It was like, all right, I can do, 6 to 10 nights a month and still be home and do pickups and drop-offs and, go to the kids' events and just be there for my family because like I said, they've always been there for me. So I think this year was a bit of a bridge year, and I've enjoyed it. I've really liked the NHL Network stuff. I've enjoyed the Islanders games. The podcast has been fun. Me and Brian Boyle go way back, so it's basically us just playing grab ass and talking hockey. So again, who knows if that's the path, forever going forward. It's been good for this year, but now it's we got to sit down together as a family and just sort of figure out what's our path. We have enough to live off of for now and live a comfortable life, but do we want more? What do we want to do to stay stimulated? How do we want to keep yourself busy? Because I think the hardest part for guys who retire is, what's that purpose? Like every day you wake up and you got to go to the rink to go do something that had a purpose to it. And now it's kind of like, oh, I guess I just don't really have to be anywhere that often. So it's a big adjustment and just being fulfilled and all that. So, again, I've been really happy with it. I'm glad to have the time off because you just constantly have your head down going for so long. It's nice to sort of take a step back and get some things done or do some things you never really had time to do. So that's a long way of saying it. It's been a good transition.
I got a question for you, Schneids, and this is something that's kind of been inspired by Dave. You mentioned like having a purpose and having something you're working towards. Like Dave is always working on new podcasts or new business endeavors. Like I don't think the guy sits still, let alone sleeps. Like obviously, like I'm the youngest of all three of us. I mean, you're late 30s, Dave's mid 40s, I'm late mid 20s. Like finding that like that masculine pursuit of like achievement of like working towards becoming a better goaltender like on the NHL Network or the podcast, like all the stuff that you're doing. Like those are all things that like they're so important to like fulfill you and not keep you in a rut. I'm curious, like, is that something you knew right away or something you had to kind of like figure out through doing different avenues business wise?
Yeah, I've tried to kick the tires. I've had some different conversations with other people in other industries, just to sort of explore what else is out there. I was a finance major in college. My dad was a strategic consultant. My mom was in education. So, I've sort of been brought up and learned other things that I enjoy doing. I like the business side of things. I like, finances. Those things interest me. So, I just didn't want to, because again, once you're in hockey, that's kind of what you're doing. And so, I wanted to make sure that, and not to say that that's not a possibility to do something different down the road. And again, my wife, she's put her life aside and her career aside to, support me in my endeavor. So it's also, hey, is there something you want to get started with or you want to work on while I sort of take the load or, do that part of it. So it's a bit of a give and take. And to your point though, it's from the age of, let's say, 15, where, maybe I could have done something with hockey. That's 23 years of my life where I've known exactly what I was going to do almost every day. And then you come to a point where it's like, I don't really know what I'm going to do today. And it's a liberating feeling, but it's also kind of a weird feeling where you're kind of like, I feel like I should be doing something, like, why am I not, what's there to do? Or if I don't get something done, it's like, did I accomplish something today? So it's a unique feeling as an ex-athlete, as you said, but also an exciting feeling because you're not tethered to one thing. You're not pigeonholed into this life and this schedule. You get to go kind of do and explore whatever you want, which, is exciting, but also kind of scary because you don't know, what if the NHL network shuts down tomorrow? It's like, okay, well, now what? Or, it's the podcast fizzles out and it's like, all right, well, I guess I got to go figure something else out. So it's, like I said, an exciting and yet kind of scary thing at the same time because you've always known what you were going to do for so long. And now that safety net's kind of gone.
Well, and Dave and I were talking about this before we were making notes for the show, and maybe we can put this in now instead of like towards the end, Dave. But
we do a hockey podcast called Sling the Biscuit every single Sunday. The clips, the bite-sized chunks are right here. Only the hits, the full-length show, which you don't want to miss, is right here. That's Dave. I'm Travis. We'll see you soon.